Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other topics, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
It's possible to have a good resignation, you know? Look, people really like it when you go just a bit early. You know, steely-jawed, far away look in your eyes, before they're getting to the point where they're sitting around in the pub saying, oh, that fucker's got to go. You surprise them. Blimey, he's gone. I didn't expect that. Resigned. You don't see that much anymore. Old school, respect. I rather like the guy. He was hounded out by the fucking press. How about that, huh?
Welcome to Quiet Right, the politics podcast that helps you overcome new-term nerves with old-school verve. I'm Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith, here to help you navigate current affairs without having to blame the dog, yet again, for having eaten your political homework.
So unbag that new PE kit, do some stretches and limber up in preparation for another Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi.
And I'm Kenny, the producer who's so old school, I remember when high-tech meant a banda copier and a shatterproof ruler. There's people in the studio going, a what copier?
The transfer window is now closed, and the big money move into the cabinet that the fans demanded has not happened. The only notable signing was Darren Jones on loan to Number 10. But with Angela Rayner admitting she underpaid on duties on a property purchase, a more significant reshuffle may be forced on Starmer anyway.
And with no fewer than 4, sometimes even 6 political parties bobbing around the low to high teens in opinion polls, we're going to go deep on electoral reform. What is it, why it's needed, what type should it take, and how we can get it.
To help us in making an overdue Quiet Riot debut, it's CEO of the leading national campaign for PR, Make Votes Matter, Emma Harrison. Welcome, Emma.
Hello, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you. And Emma, this summer, everyone I know from our age group down has either been desperate for Oasis tickets or is still crowing about having managed to get them. But you opted for Pulp instead. So how was it? And do you reckon they make a live better performance than the Gallaghers?
Oh, Pulp were amazing. And it was such a dream for me because I meant to see them when I was a little bit younger, but for reasons I didn't go. And this was my first time. So I do remember the first time. And it was the O2 and it was fantastic. But I am still a little bit jealous I didn't go Oasis, but you never know. I hear they might be touring next year.
Did Jarvis get his bum out?
Sadly not, although it might be a little bit saggy. Sorry, sorry Jarvis. He's a little bolder now. But he danced and he sang and the crowd loved it.
When it comes to like all of the youngsters getting in on the Oasis stuff, like I do find myself thinking, no, that was my era. Where were you while we were getting high? You were in the womb, kids. You were in the fucking womb. That's where you were. But then I love a bit of Pink Floyd, so and I definitely wasn't around when they were.
I went to see the Rolling Stones with my parents, and I actually loved doing that. And I found it really cool being able to hang out with them and watch the Stones, who were amazing in Hyde Park. So actually, I think it's quite good to see young people embracing our music.
Annoyed I didn't get to go.
Well,
people grew up in the wrong country. You should have grown up listening to
You feel you should have had priority for this.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you lost your virginity to Wonderwall, you should have had priority access.
100%.
If you lost your virginity to Wonderwall, you should have had hard drugs. Talking of insufferable rackets. For listeners, a quick reminder that on Sunday, the government's testing the mobile phone emergency alert system at 3 p.m. So if you're hooked up to 4G or 5G, of course, you're going to hear a siren or a spoken warning, depending on your phone settings, even if your phone is in silent mode. The reason that I'm mentioning is this because for most of our listeners, it will be an excuse to be so hilarious on social media. But if you or someone you know has a hidden mobile phone to help them deal with a domestic abuse situation, that alarm can be a bit of a big problem. You can disable the alarm in your phone settings under the notifications menu, and we'll drop a link to the details in the show notes. And as Naomi has reminded me, the same trick can be used if you've got a hidden phone for your party supplies or your secret lover. A bone phone, as it were.
It was Alex that reminded
No,
him.
it wasn't.
Quiet, riot.
It never rainers, but it pours. The proverbial wisdom goes. As phase 2 of Starmer's administration begins, it is difficult to shake the suspicion that it will be very similar to phase 1 in the apparent lack of any grip on either the agenda generally or individual topics. The entire legacy media establishment, with many of the supposed disruptors following its lead with remarkable obedience and discipline, seems to alternate between taking potshots at Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner, and some of it has finally stuck. On Wednesday, as we record, the Deputy Prime Minister has admitted that, having taken additional tax advice, the tax advice she originally followed was wrong. She had underpaid tax on the purchase of a flat in Hove and has referred herself to the government's ethics advisor. The leader of the opposition, never able to resist an easy own goal, went on the attack.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure we would have heard all that sympathy if it was a Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who was being attacked. I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her. Mr. Speaker, we're not the ones referring ourselves to ethics advisors. The fact is, he is floundering.
Mr. Speaker, if it had been the party opposite, there wouldn't have been the accountability that there now is in place, because they spent years and years avoiding it. And she makes her claims about the economy under their watch are about as credible as her place at Stanford University, frankly.
At the same time, Labour's support is under incredible pressure from the right, with Reform UK's lead in double digits, and from the left, with the Greens having elected self-described eco-populist Zach Polanski, and the Corbyn-Sultana project slowly taking shape. What do we know about the Rayner situation as we record on Wednesday afternoon?
What we know is what she has told Beth Rigby. So we've, I think, listened to that interview now. And in it, Beth gives her a chance to say what happened. And Angela says that as part of her divorce proceedings, and with her child or their children at the forefront of their mind, but particularly a child who has a disability and will have lifelong consequences to deal with because of that, the family home remains the family home for consistency for that child. When Angela has custody of the children, she moves into it. When her ex-husband has custody of the children, he lives in it. And so that they've got this security for the family to keep their life as normal as it possibly can be for them, given that their mum is deputy
So they've
PM.
made adjustments to the
So they've
flat,
made
to
adjustments,
the house,
exactly.
basically, yeah.
And so Angela does no longer own that property, but in order to buy the property she does own in Hove, she liquidated her 25% share of that property that is owned in trust, and the trust was set up to protect her son. So I believe her when she says that she has come at this from the perspective of wanting to do the most appropriate thing for her family and to ensure that he has all of his needs met and is least disrupted by
And it's
her
important
career
to
and the
point
divorce.
out also that it's the court that
Right.
set up the trust.
Exactly.
The trust wasn't set up by her.
Exactly, it's not
lawyers.
a tax
Yeah, yeah,
avoidance trust. It is there to protect him as a ward of that trust. And so she has said that I was advised what stamp duty I was or was not liable for when purchasing the new property. And subsequently, she has had even more expert legal counsel, which has said because of the existence of the trust, actually, she did owe more stamp duty than she paid. As soon as she knew that, she applied for the gagging order, if you like, to be lifted on the setup of the trust, which is there to provide security and privacy for her family, and in particular her child with a disability. And as soon as it has been lifted, which was yesterday, we're recording on Wednesday, she was then free to talk about it. Up to that point, she was not.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was going to have breached something if she'd come cleaner sooner. But as soon as she knew, she applied to lift it because she wanted to be able to be transparent about everything. So what she's done now is referred herself to the Commons Standards Commissioner and has alerted HMRC to say that she believes extra tax is now owed, and presumably any interest that will have accrued on top of that outstanding tax amount that she will be presumably paying forthwith. However, what we don't know is whether the Commissioner will find in her favour, subject to all the evidence she's given them, that she tried her best to act in good faith, that she received poor counsel, has now received better counsel. As we all know, it isn't necessarily about whether or not you're found to have fallen short or not. It's about the perception of it, and particularly the perception of a Prime Minister very much under the cosh, who may feel that he can no longer have her by his side.
Did you see any of the interview that she did with Beth Rigby?
I did, yeah.
Right.
And I was very moved by it. She was clearly on the verge of tears.
Yeah. She was properly annoyed, it seemed to me, that, she really had done everything she could to play by every possible rule, and still she ended up falling foul of them.
And often it isn't making a mistake that causes you to lose your career. It's how you handle the mistake. And I think, given what we now know about what she was and wasn't allowed to say, and the advice she did and didn't receive, and when she received it, she's clearly tried her damnedest to deal with a genuine mistake as quickly and as efficiently and as openly as possible. I just don't know if it's going to be enough.
Are there standards different for women in politics, for working class people in politics, for Labour politicians specifically, or is it all three that kind of intersect in Angela Rayner and means she's facing the harshest possible environment for judgment?
I mean, man, did you see those pictures over the summer and her in a canoe, like just chilling out and vaping? I mean, when Boris Johnson was pictured with his kids, it was like, oh, isn't this lovely family hanging out?
He was on a yacht.
He was on a yacht, you see. And I mean, there is such a healthy level.
Wrong kind of small boat again.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Do not get me started on that. But, there is a healthy level of misogyny around this. They really, really don't like her. They don't like a strong working class woman who got pregnant as a teenager and has got this amazing career. They don't like that. They don't like the fact she's straight talking. Had a go at her for going to Glyndebourne. I mean, it's not for me, but if she wants to go and hang out and watch opera, good for her, but they just can't stand it. So I think there is a lot of that intersectionality about class. I also think the thing about her kids is really important. I used to work at Mencap years ago when we worked a lot on trust to make sure that children with complex disabilities were protected in the future. And it's really hard for those parents. They have to put a lot of trust in someone who isn't them, and they're worried about what happens when they die to their kids. So there's quite a lot of infrastructure around this, and they were doing the right thing for that child. And now it's sort of come back like blown up in her face. And I do feel really sorry for her. And I've got to say, I was like, Naomi, I felt like quite emotional when I saw her do that interview. But will she survive? I don't know, because they've really got it in for her.
Yeah, I think that's the reason that she doesn't survive, because in the short term, my view is she needs to step back anyway because of the way that media will treat her. And then take time, come back a little bit bruised, a little bit wiser, back in time for the next general election. But from the perspective of somebody...
Why would she want to?
But that's the point I was going to make, is that it's not just that she will be a target for all the right-wing media. Her family and her loved ones are going to suffer as well. It will be unbearable, not just for her, but for all those in her immediate circle as well. So even if she braves it out for 2 weeks, it's just going to become horrible.
Yeah.
I think, look, if you're being critical, it's either cock up or conspiracy. I don't believe it's conspiracy. I don't think she is a tax dodger by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think she has tried to diddle us and flip her homes or any of that nonsense. But I do think it is a cock up. And the cock up is clearly of her original advisors making. But she's the housing minister. She's a deputy prime minister. She should have had access to the best possible advice at the first time. And that does then lend itself to saying, well, are you good enough? Do you know enough to do that job if you can't even get your own house in order, to use a very hackneyed phrase? And I think that'll be where they now try and come for her.
Do you know where I would push back against that is that...
Oh, sorry, that was me painting what I think the attack will be, not what I think.
I get that. What I was going to say is that it seems that a tiny amount of wealth for a Labour politician or a working class person is unacceptable. And there is a level above which, if you graduate...
You're too big to fail.
Because I find it extraordinary. I was thinking back to Rishi Sunak, repeatedly using the excuse that we own such a large investment portfolio, I have no idea what's in it. When it turned out that he was profiting from COVID contracts, when it turned out that his wife had shares in a childcare, in a nursery company.
There was the whole scandal about their swimming pool application.
There was the Jeremy Hunt thing where he was like, oh, God, I forgot. I had these 7 rental flats that I'd completely forgot about. And
it is grotesque.
And it does seem to me that it's the same thing that you would call aggressive estate planning for a bloke in the Tory party. And she's done 2% of it and is being crucified publicly.
Totally. Emma and I know better than anyone else in this room how awful it is being a woman in the political sphere, and neither of us is anywhere close to having the profile of an elected politician, let alone Deputy Prime Minister. It is brutal. I mean, it is savage. The attacks that you and I get compared to the men that lead similar organisations in our sector is off the scale. On social media, everything is more difficult for us, whether that is fundraising, whether it is being heard, whether it is getting our voices onto panels and into the room and being listened to. There is so much misogyny and classism in all of this. And Alex, you are dead right. The very people running ads above the pieces attacking her around tax planning and tax advice and what to do ahead of Reese's budget to make sure she doesn't get a penny more of what you're going to leave your kids. And no one calls it out. The threshold and the account to which people are held, just staggering. And I've said it so many times before, like, we're just serfs. And I half wonder if she should have gone out on the attack more than on the...
Well, maybe she will.
The tears. I hope she does.
Because I think maybe that's the only thing that actually can save her. The newspapers have had it in for her for a very long time. I don't think this will go away from the front pages until she's gone. And I think her only option then becomes to go on the attack, because, and the reason I say this is because I think the vast majority of people out there, if she says, look, I was buying a flat, my only flat, I went to a conveyancing solicitor. They said, this is what you need to pay, and I paid it. I think that will seem relatable to most people out there rather than the Tory position, which I heard on Politics Live on Politics Live today, which was, well, you don't go to a conveyancing solicitor for tax advice, you go to a specialist tax accountant. And that seems to me to be, well, no, that's what you do because you've got loads of fucking money to burn.
I watched it just thinking the sympathy I have comes from a place of knowing how complicated our tax system is. And that every year when I do my tax return, I think, and I used to work in tax, right? I'm a chartered accountant. And it is baffling. And every year the rules change and what you can and can't. Our entire tax system is rigged against those who don't have a full-time, fully paid tax consultant doing everything for them.
I can see you're very, very upset about having to make this statement.
It's because it's my children, and I try and protect my children before anything else. I'm a mum, and my son's been through so much, and I'm so proud of how he's come through all of those challenges, and he's come through a lot. And he's an incredible human being, and he's incredibly inspirational, the way he goes about day to day and what he's able to do and how he overcomes those challenges. But that's his story, and me having to explain that and say that, I feel like I should protect my children from that. But the accusations that were levelled at me, and I wasn't able to say, and even though, I did explain that there is a court order, this is not accurate, I have not set up a trust, I have not tried to dodge any tax, I have relied on advice, I have done everything that I felt was proper, and the accusations that were levelled in the press was incredibly wild. I've got three homes, Rayner. I haven't got 3 homes. I have a family home that I don't own.
Did you think about just packing it in rather than having to do this now?
I spoke to my family about it. I spoke to my ex-husband, who has been an incredibly supportive person, and because he knows that all I've done is try and support my family and help them. And the pictures that were some pictures of my children were put up again in the media in the week that I was trying to spend some time with them, and that was incredibly distressing for my son, that those pictures were were put up in the press, and I said, please don't put the face of my children. And it's really distressing for them because they don't want to be in the public eye. It's distressing that they read stuff about me all the time anyway, but, that they've got used to that.
How important do we think Rayner is to Starmer's setup, actually, considering how important she's been in maybe calming down some backbench rebellions and things like that? That working classness of hers seems to me quite a key element of his setup. Is there a like-for-like replacement we can think of?
God, not off the top of my head, but she's so important to that left flank, isn't she? And we're thinking about what's going on with your party and Zach Polansky and the Greens. Labour have to think really hard about how they reassure that left base that they still take them seriously in this complicated world we find ourselves in. I'm trying to think who would replace her. Who's that natural replacement? Maybe one of the 24 intake that we haven't seen yet. There's quite a lot of women. It was a big intake for women. It would be nice to see one of those
people like Kat Eccles could potentially come up through the ranks and representing the left. And I think what is so potent about the Angela Rayner story is not just the, having come from a working class background, becoming a single parent at a tender age, working in social care, etc. She is of the unions. Her story is embedded in that union backing. If I hadn't joined my union and I hadn't got involved with them, I would never be where I am today. And there are very few of them who I think can tell quite such a traditionally dyed-in-the-wool red rose story as her.
And there's a lot of shakiness around unions at the moment and their support for Labour. And quite interestingly, yesterday, on Tuesday, the National Education Union sent quite a few messages about Zach Polansky. And I thought, and made a big point about the fact they weren't affiliated to Labour. And we know that there's some people are thinking about whether they should stay affiliated to Labour. So the left also needs a candidate that can reassure that very rich union base and really important for workers' rights, and also have the credibility to hold their own around that cabinet table. And there must be loads of women and who could fulfil that. We just need 5 minutes to think about who they are.
The added problem is we also need to defend the women that are in there at the moment, because otherwise all you're saying is, who's next for the lions in the arena,
Quiet.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
If this is the result of hostile briefing from within the Labour fold, about which there is a little bit of a rumour mill, considering the problems it creates, what is the goal here?
If I was Keir Starmer right now, I probably wouldn't stand too close to Wes Streeting unless I could see where his hands were.
You think this has come from
No, I
Streeting?
don't think it's come from Wes at all. I'm not suggesting that for a second, but he is the heir apparent for a very powerful quarter of the party. I don't think he at the moment would get past the members, but he would get past a lot of the MPs because of the process that has to happen. And Angela would clearly be quite a hit, I think, with the membership. It is fascinating to me that, a year in, YouGov are already polling when he's going to go, who's going to replace him. All of that seems to have come much sooner than one would expect. This is probably not unlinked to the big British election study survey that's come out just before we went into recording, that has really examined that rapid decline for Labour since last July. They are saying it has splintered mostly to indecision.
Wow.
Right? Or the left Liberal parties. But they've lost as well their very few right-wing voters. So essentially they're saying that Labour's decline is remarkable because the strategy since the election was designed to appeal to right Conservative voters. It hasn't worked on its own terms because they've lost those right-wing voters, the very few that they even had, while losing much larger numbers of left-wing voters. and that the main competition for those 2024 voters are the other Liberal left parties. And you've both mentioned your party and the Greens in the same breath. And on Sunday school, Kenny and I talked about how Lib Dems are now going to try and target some Labour seats too.
And Lib Dems are really kind of neglected whenever this is looked at. And I think quite idiotically so, actually, because they're very good at targeting individual seats. And they have built on their very good electoral showing. They're now on 14-15% in most polls.
Yep. They're doing okay. Just to recap then on the Bez stuff. They say that support for Labour has fallen more sharply after this election than it has for any winning party covered by them since they began doing this work decades ago. So there's over 20% of their 2024 voters have moved to undecided. Now, the McSweeney strategy is betting on is that all of them won't be able to let Farage slip through the middle by staying at home and will turn out for Labour in the end. That is a high-risk strategy, according to this polling, and that they are really losing quite a lot to the Lib Dems and Greens. And all of Reform's growth seems to be coming from the Tories and non-voters, like the people that did turn out for the 2016 referendum who didn't before. I think it's fascinating that Salma finds himself in a position where people are now just openly talking about when he goes and why he probably can't lead them into the next election.
It's interesting, though, that the only candidates I've heard about are Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham. I mean, both very talented politicians, but Andy would struggle under the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill to become an MP because they're banning mayors from being candidates and running. So he'd actually have to stand down as a mayor before he'd even take that jump. And it's quite a big leap for someone who's built such a sort of a credible voice as the champion of the North to do that. But time and time again, like, where are the female candidates? Where are the women? Labour really needs a female prime minister. I mean, the Tories, look how many
they could do with a female leader.
Well, they could.
They don't even have that.
True. Yes,
apart from interim, and Harriet Harman did it for a bit.
So who are they? Who are these people? I'd like to see.
I don't know. Who'd like...
Who would I like?
Yeah, who'd like in your fantasy football version of the government?
I have also always been a big fan of Angie Rayner because I do think that she brings something that lots of people don't. And I come from like quite a small rural community, not like a posh one, quite a poor one, where women absolutely just stayed at home and had babies and that was it. So it was really nice to see, for me, like women like that really out there striking out. I think they're good. Rachel Reeves could have done it, but not anymore. No. Not a chance. And then Lisa Nandy. And then you look at it all and you think, actually, there's no one at the moment who's really doing what Wes is doing. So what Wes is doing so brilliantly is he's like going out there front foot with his message. This morning he was on the Today programme and he said some things that I was a bit surprised by. And then I thought, this is a leadership campaign. So what we need to see is some of the women who are there, who are ready.
If we imagine those people in a one-to-one sort of debate with someone like Nigel Farage, because to me, Angela Rayner is clearly the person that could take him on and just not put up with his bullshit, speak very plainly. So who's got that? Who's got that directness? Who looks like a real person and sounds like real person?
No. Not Wes.
Not Wes. Even though his backstory is actually, if you were stitching together a politician's perfect backstory, you know...
But it's like they always say on Love Island, my type on paper.
Yeah.
Right. The mini reshuffle that went on at the start of the week, sort of behind the scenes, again, because I am becoming very keenly aware, just from the names being reeled out, that you are much more geeky than I am on the ins and outs of the government. So are there any names that moved around or that were promoted in that mini reshuffle that piqued your interest, that you thought, oh, that's someone good that will make a difference, or not?
So it is interesting, isn't it? Because actually, Naomi and I talked about Darren. Now, there's someone who's got leadership potential and I think will have a good run there. I think it's very smart, very sensible. Is it James Murray? I forgot his last name. But
James Murray, former deputy mayor.
Yeah, and one of the Ealing MPs at my neighbourhood. So I'm pleased to see him in there. I hope he does a good job. But I'm going to say it, don't you? Where are the women? Again, and this is what what worries me about what's going on in politics at the moment. Is
Minouche Shafiq is brilliant. I'm very happy by that appointment as economic advisor.
Not many people have been talking about it, and I actually think that it would be interesting to hear more about, because I think she will do a fantastic job.
She is even a proponent of land value taxation, which... regular listeners will know she won't now probably, but look, Darren is superb at communicating and a consummate media performer. he would take on Farage in a, oh, you think you're able to speak to centre-right wealthy voters? Well, here comes Darren Jones. He certainly can. So he's not the antithesis to Farage in the way Angela is, but my goodness, he is extremely good on media. And I've always thought, if I were a dyed-in-the-wool Blairite on the right of the PLP, I would have gone for Darren, not Wes.
Yeah.
Like, I see Darren as a much more polished communicator than Wes.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, Darren Jones, as you know, I'm a big fan too. He's the most accomplished media operator, I think,
Easily.
on the top.
Easily.
Yeah.
And he's a great
tier.
progressive on things like Europe
But the thing
and
is,
PR.
this post will now keep him away from doing that, won't it?
We don't know. It's a brand new
by virtue of his
post.
closeness to the Prime
Yeah.
Minister, I can't see him going on the morning media round twice a week.
I don't know,
I don't
because
know, yeah.
Pat McFadden has.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat McFadden has
maybe.
basically been doing that kind of a role. And Darren has a dual reporting line to Starmer and Pat. And Pat gets wheeled out every time there's a really tricky media moment. He's like their Grant Shapps, the one that, oh shit, no one else is going to do the broadcast round, better put up Grant, better put up Pat. And Pat does it in a very different way to the way Darren would do it, but is solid at doing it. So I'm not sure. It's a brand new role. It's never existed before. I'm sure Darren will not want to be clipped of wing, let's say, and will just push himself out there.
And if Labour want to get themselves out of this unholy mess they find themselves in from a polling perspective, they really need to get out there front foot, start communicating what they're doing well. I mean, this community empowerment bill they were talking about in the House on Tuesday is fantastic for local communities. You can go and buy your pub. Now, that might not mean a lot to people living in London, but if you live in a rural community like mine, where the pub closed 20 years ago, being able to buy it is fantastic. That community asset is back. They should be talking about that, shouting about all the stuff that they're doing about hours for childcare for 30 hours a week.
One thing.
The deal with Norway, I mean,
Totally. I mean, Starmer should have just been in a nursery school all day long on Monday talking about that.
Yeah.
That would have had such a huge change in the pocket of millions of people around the country in terms of being able to afford that now. Interestingly, on the point about getting out there, getting the message, YouGov, top 10 most famous current MPs in 2025 this year, interview appearances on YouTube channels in the last year or so. Rishi Sunak, 0. Jeremy Corbyn, 7. Keir Starmer, 2. Nigel Farage, 9. Angela Rayner, 0. Ed Miliband, 2. Rachel Reeves, 1. So they do need to learn how to get out there with different voices on different platforms, because their main opponents are out there doing it in far greater number.
Right, external challenges. Zach Wolanski, new leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, we should say, because they have a different setup. We had him on this show. We had a big old chat with him. Having seen his first few outings as leader, he's done a lot of media in the last 24 hours.
Yes.
What's your impression? Does he present a challenge to the Labour Party, or is he in some ways kind of easier to dismiss?
Well, I mean, notwithstanding the whole hypnotherapy thing, which obviously was going to come back and bite him, but I actually think he dealt with that really well on Good Morning Britain this morning when he was talking to Ed Balls about it. And, you have to spat these things off. He is a good media performer. And why that actually does matter is that the media is desperate for more and more voices.
He's done 17 YouTubes in the last year.
Yeah.
And he knows how to do it. He's well trained. He's quite fun. He'll talk about anything. He's very responsive. So I think from a media point of view, he's going to do a good job. Should Labour be worried? They should be worried about everything that's going on in the left at the moment, because there's a lot of new voices coming out. People are listening to them, and they are Zara Sultana has got a great social media game. You see her pictures of her at festivals. She's always there, with selfies with groups of people after speaking at different events. She knows how to reach out to those people who are bored of Labour or might never have voted. And remember as well, we've got votes at 16 possibly happening. So Zach's going to talk to those people. He's really, that eco-populism is going to land really well with younger voters. So Labour should be worried, but I think the challenge he's got mostly is the fact that he's not an MP, right? Because that's where a lot of the the spheres of influence happen, lots of the chit chat. So he's going to have to work harder at showing, as a leader of a party, that he is important and he's at that sort of like virtual top table when he's not in the House.
I think he's very good at running an internal Green Party election, and I think he did it supremely well. And Adrian and Ellie just didn't come close in terms of campaigning. Turnout was low. People comment on that. There is a reason for this. The Green Party England and Wales rules means that candidates don't get the contact details of members, which is quite unusual. Most political parties will say, there you go, have a means to contact them, knock on their door, send them an email, whatever. That would, of course, massively drive up turnout. But he did get an enormous, he won with a landslide, like 80% of the vote that did turn out. We've mentioned it before. He did a recruitment drive as well, very successfully, most of which happened before Corbyn and Sultana launched Your Party. So it remains to be seen whether those people will now walk away, go off to their original Corbynite home, if you like, political home, having now, voted for Zach. So I think Zach would have had an easier ride if the others hadn't got their act together and launched whatever Your Party is and is going to become. But you're right, Labour we've seen it now in the analysis of the data, they are hemorrhaging votes big time to the Lib Dems, the Greens, and presumably also, once it is a proper party, Your Party as well. But at those festivals, he is pictured with Zara Sultana. And if those two can do a deal with each other about where they do and don't feel candidates to give each other the best run, they will do very well at next year's London elections and a few other places around the country too.
Naomi, what's our call to action today?
Well, just given how poorly women are served in public life, head over to the micro charity 50/50 Parliament, which is aimed at getting more women into Parliament, better supported when they're there. I think now more than ever, we all realise that misogyny is alive and well in the 21st century, and these women need our help. So we'll leave a link in the show notes.
Quiet Riot.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
Quiet Riot.
All right, strap in, folks. It's time for the segment where society finds tasty new ways to be offended by a menu of misery you didn't even know existed. Luckily, we've got Alex here to sift through the week's bottomless buffet of outrage, so we don't have to. It's time, of course, for Wokey Dokey.
Wokey Dokey.
Alex, enlighten us. What's woke this week?
By huge public demand. I mean, I got over 100 messages about this. It has to be woke bread. Alex Phillips is she Reform UK now?
Yeah,
because she used to be Tory and then she was Brexit Party. Then she went back to the Tories, but I think she's Reform UK now. So she posted, I miss normal bread, fluffy, bland, unobtrusive, absorbent, thinly sliced bread that soaks up butter and efficiently sandwiches a filling without messing up the flavour. It's being made extinct by bloody holy sourdough, which is a grey, chewy, vacuous, fusty taste, horrible woke alternative that doesn't soak up butter, can't be sliced thinly, doesn't toast properly, tangs like it's gone damp and fetid, makes a god-awful sandwich, and is like noshing on a poncy, porous plimsoll.
You're a cook, Alex. Did sourdough predate the Chorley loaf?
By quite a few years.
Right. So she is anti-tradition.
Yeah. I mean, really, the woke bread is white slice.
Of course.
You know, that's the new arrival on the scene, marketed specifically at fairly well-to-do middle-class women who didn't have time to bake bread and
let it
apparently
rise.
even slice it. This reminded me of Nigel Farage's video rant about left-wing milk options.
Oh, yeah.
Where he was complaining that all he could get was either plant-based or semi-skimmed.
He wanted to suck it straight out.
No, but anyone that has ever worked at making coffee will know that full-fat milk is really hard to get a froth on, which is why most places use semi-skimmed. And, of course, woke sandwich fillings that we covered in our
Kemi Badenoch didn't like
Christmas
her.
specials.
She only likes the steak.
What's going on here? It's a sort of, bear with me, it's a sort of great white replacement theory. White sliced bread is not extinct in any way. It's still the completely standard thing that fills most shelves in any supermarket or corner shop you go. Good sourdough is lovely. It's not for everything. And on that, I must agree. It's quite it's a grown-up bread, sourdough. Yeah. And it's good for grown-up things. Yeah. But I just love the idea that there's left-wing milk, communist sandwich fillings, and now there's woke bread. So really, you could feed your family entirely on a diet of wokeness, should you choose so. So there you go. Woke bread by popular demand. I yield to you, O listeners.
As they would say in Scotland, "Gie is peace." And if you don't understand what a peace and jam is, then you're quite clearly not Scottish, because that would be the sandwich of choice as a Scottish child growing up. Peace and jam sandwich. Gie's peace. Thanks, Alex. And listeners, we love, obviously, hearing about instances of wokey-dokiness that you find on the interwebs. So do keep them coming to quietriotpod@gmail.com.
When it comes to democracy, the UK likes to think of itself as the mother of parliaments. But unlike most modern democracies, the UK still uses a first-past-the-post system for general elections, meaning millions of votes don't count and parties can win majority governments on little more than a third of public backing. Across Europe and beyond, PR is the norm. In fact, the UK is now only a handful of countries left that still clings to first-past-the-post at national elections, putting us firmly in the company of nations like Belarus, the US and Canada. Almost everywhere else, including, of course, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, people have recognised that fairness, representation and legitimacy matter in a democracy and that we need to reflect the way people actually vote. Now, probably because of their historically low poll ratings, even Tories are beginning to make the case for PR, joining the likes of Farage and Tice, as well as the Greens and Lib Dems. Let's have a listen.
It is very much my view that our outdated first-past-the-post electoral system is not fit for purpose, and we will campaign with anyone and everyone to change this electoral system.
But PM Keir Starmer has made it clear his government won't be making PR a priority, despite his party and affiliated unions backing it in huge numbers on the conference floor.
Will the Prime Minister find government time, make it available, so we can consider this bill on electoral reform and restore the public's trust in our politics?
Look, proportional representation is not our policy. We won't be making time for it. And I just gently say to him, he didn't do too badly under the system as it is.
Well, I'm disappointed in that reply and hope he will reflect on Labour's own policy.
So today, we are asking not whether it is time for the UK to finally move on from first past the post and join the rest of the democratic world, because it definitely is, but how and when we can change the system, and importantly, how we can debunk the many myths about proportional representation. Emma, for listeners who might be newer to this than you or I, why is the UK such an outlier and still using first past the post when so many other democracies have moved to PR?
So I always think about it in three buckets. So there's history, there's inertia, and then there's everyone's favourite, political self-interest. Our democracy, as it stands now, was created in about 1850, when we were still sending kids up chimneys and women weren't allowed to vote. And it was created by men who stood opposite each other, liberals and conservatives. I thought we need a jolly good way of sorting this out. And it's just bobbed on ever since. It's then become Conservatives and Labour, but we've always had this two-party system. Elsewhere in Europe, particularly, we saw the falls of monarchy. We saw responses to the catastrophic impact of the First and Second World War. So we saw lots of changes. But we also, the big thing in Europe was multi-party system. And there's a great professor, Dennis Pilon, I thought it was Pylon, but it turns out it's actually Pilon, says, first past the post can't contain this multi-party system. So, history says we do it well, let's not change. Then there's inertia. No one's really pushed hard for this change. Lots of people have said, we quite want a different system, but we haven't done that. Until, I'd say, about the mid-90s, when everyone remembers Jimmy Goldsmith and the UKIP party, but started showing that there was a way of being another party. So since then, we have seen more and more parties grow in power and stature and influence through both the media, but also within our political frame. I think the big sort of turning point, really, there was about 2015 and all wrapped up in elections. And that's when people have started saying, we need to change our system. And this is where political self-interest comes in, because the Labour Party have actually committed to PR. There was a vote in 2022 where the party, its members, said we want to move to PR. And we expected it would happen, because also the unions, as you say, Naomi, backed it. But, Keir Starmer gets in number 10 and suddenly it's really comfy, isn't it? I quite like that chair. I like the power. And I think there's something about once you're in power that you don't want to be the person who then disperses it. So I think that political self-interest has been a real blocker for us. But things I think are changing now.
But of course, Labour has got a heritage of bringing in PR. It was the Labour government during the 70s that brought it in Northern Ireland. It was a Labour government that extended it to the devolved assemblies when they set those up. It's Blair that brings it in under the D'Hondt system when we still were able to vote in European elections. They use it internally for their own elections. Why can't, and Mark Drakeford, leader in Wales, brings it in one term there. So why would you be afraid of almost always being the largest party in a coalition government more than being in opposition most of the time?
And again, I think this becomes like political self-interest. And I think when you're sat there, you can't imagine not being sat there. And I think that Labour, they had this stellar majority, this huge, but on 34% of the vote. And less than 60% of the voting public voted during the last election. And you'll see the graphs. The graphs just show decline in the numbers of people turning up to elections. They won on 34. So you probably think, I can do this, I can keep this going, and I've got a big programme of work. And this is where it really bamboozles me about the Labour Party at the moment, is they have got a progressive agenda that they want to push through. But if they don't change the voting system now, come 2029, Nigel Farage is getting in on 30% of the vote and then is going to cancel all of the progressive policies that Labour have been put in.
OK, well, you just touched on the thing that is the most common pushback anytime you talk about PR to those that might be open to the idea but are terrified of Farage, or those that are sort of genuinely dyed-in-the-wool advocates of the current system. So how do you, when people say, but PR lets the far right in, look at Europe, look at Maloney, look at how well the AfD are doing in Germany, they use examples from Europe to make their case. So how do we respond to that myth? And what's the reality in the countries that are actually using PR? It's about curtailing power rather than stopping them getting in. Is that the right kind of approach?
So I think the interesting thing about this is about how people are voting at the moment. When I talk to people every day about why they want to change the voting system, and they tell me that their vote doesn't count, so they can't be bothered to participate. And what we know from other evidence is if you don't think your vote counts, you are pushed to the extremes. And some of us might remember where the BNP had a bit of a bump back in the late 80s. And that is because people are fed up. They don't think their voice is heard. So we have to have a bit of a reality check as well, that those people are out there. They want their voices heard. So that's number one. I think when you look at Europe, and Compass have just done a brilliant report on this about actually how PR holds back the extremes, because it forces the central parties and centralist people to work together better to make sure that those people out there don't lead. So I think that's a struggle for us, because in the UK, we're not great at collaboration. We talk about being fantastic at it, but we're not. I think the examples were...
Brussels will quite famously tell us they don't really love collaboration.
We don't love collaboration. So I think there's plenty of examples across Europe where actually, and you look at what the Netherlands, where the far right did very well, but they did not get the top job because the rest of the parties came together. Now, some people don't like that, and they think that if you got the most votes, you should always have the top job. But, I'm not of that opinion. I think here, the biggest fear is people say to me, and actually an MP just last week said to me, sure, I used to like PR, but now I'm worried that it will let Farage in. And I just said, he's knocking at your door anyway, because you won on 34% of the vote. If there was an election tomorrow, he would win on that same percentage. And they sort of shake their heads and said, probably people won't vote for them. But that's not what we're hearing. And it's not what we're seeing. And if you look at the local council results, which again, very unfair, first past the post, Reform have won a lot of councils. Now, okay, a lot of their councillors are already resigning as well. But people out there are motivated to vote for Farage. And we have seen as well that, and as you said, Naomi, from the evidence, is that people who don't vote are thinking about voting for Farage. So even if you don't really like PR, but if you are progressive, right now you think the best way of keeping a progressive government in place, you change our voting system. It's that obvious.
And can I just say something? When I get challenged on that point, that very point about letting extremists in, the point I always make is that in first past the post, there is no post. It's literally the worst misnomer in British politics. Yeah. Whoever gets the most votes wins, regardless of whether it's 35%, 45%. In other words, our country is condemned to be ruled by losers, by definition. And pretty much every election, without sort of special rules or requirements since the Second World War has effectively had this country ruled by losers.
Yeah. And because of our constitutional setup, they get total power.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are very, very few breaks on the executive. In Germany in 1932, the Nazis got 37.2% of the vote, which is a higher percentage than our current government enjoys, yet they still couldn't form a government. And at his war crimes trial, Hermann Goering said that had that election been fought under the British system, the Nazis would have won every single seat in the Reichstag that year.
Yeah.
So if you think first past the post keeps the far right out, think again.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
We're going to come on to loads of other things, but I want to bring Alex in as a genuine continental citizen who has I think, quite a healthy view of how Europeans view the UK's reticence to adopt a more proportionate system.
I mean, I would say that part of it is that the British really don't like to follow what Europeans are doing. That's a big part of it. Like, if you could invent a completely new system and called it the Union Jack system,
I've always said we should call it like
right away. Most places in Europe actually have a slightly hybridized PR system, and that's also important to note that most of them have basically a threshold below which you don't get any seat. And then all that sort of wastage, in some countries it's 5%, in some countries it's 3%, all that wastage gets gathered up and redistributed to either the strongest party or the two strongest parties or whatever, so that they can more effectively form coalitions and govern. So there is a kind of safety valve there for really niche, loony, fringe concerns. Really interesting experience from Greece, which changed to PR. They have a system where it's basically that hybridized PR system, and those seats that fall below that number get redistributed to the parties, but also the top party gets a bonus of 50 seats. They just get a big bonus saying, you came top, here's 50 seats to govern with, basically. And when Syriza came in, which was a brand new party, and it changed the system. But because of our constitutional setup, you can't change the system for the next election, or the change always applies to the election after that, if that makes sense. So when they then lost the next election, the next party changed it back to exactly what it was. So we actually only got one election under complete PR,
pure.
and knowing it was then going to flip back. And that election didn't yield a particularly helpful result, but everyone knowing that the next election would be under the old system basically made no deals, so that we went on to the next election almost straight away, which one of the establishment right-wing parties won, of course.
But coalition is just such a more natural feature of European politics. And it is such a dirty word here. Unstable government.
But
it'll lead to an unstable government.
The other European feature, though, which I don't think fully applies here, and I think it's why a lot of people are a bit reticent, is that because of a tradition of PR and coalitions, most European countries also have very effective sort of cordon sanitaires, very effective firewalls to keep far-right parties out. And I can understand a little bit the apprehension about imposing a PR system here, because I don't think the Conservatives would hesitate for a second to put Farage into government in some sort of coalition. And that does make me pause for breath a little bit.
I can imagine, but you look at like voting trends, right? And you count and then this is the problem with the winner takes all system, as I like to call it, as opposed to first past the post, is that actually all those votes, the progressive votes, would have actually formed the government in most of those times. And this, so I think that's what progressives have to remember, that we are more likely to govern and like for a longer term. I think the other one thing I'd like to pick up, like really important point you made about thresholds. So one of the things that people have been asking me a lot about recently is Israel. And their fear about how the government functions there. They have no threshold. So it's really important that any voting system that is created absolutely does have a threshold. You have to have a minimum amount of votes to be taken seriously.
If we want it to happen, Emma, talk us through the how, because given a very strong absolute no from Sama that we've had, is a coalition with a progressive party that has already advocated for a long time for PR, like the Lib Dems or the Greens, or the SNP even, the only real tangible route for us to get this? I mean, how is it ever going to happen when you've got two parties that are always in control, taking it in turns, that just don't want it?
Yeah, I'm absolutely not waiting for a coalition government. We can't. There's too much at stake and at risk. And I think I'd say that look at the path that Labour have taken so far. So 2022, they voted, the members voted for PR. 2023, all of those trade unions came in behind it. 2024, the APPG on fair elections was established, and it is now the biggest APPG, all-party parliamentary group in Westminster, majority Labour MPs. And we know that we only need a small number more of those Labour MPs to say yes to PR, that there's a big majority within the House of Commons, and then it's time to push. And I think that what is lacking is some of the public push on this, and people are fearful because of the Farage element, even though I speak to a lot of reform voters as well who also want proportional representation, although interestingly Farage has started saying that first past the post might be his friend, so they might change their stance on that. But so I think we need some public debate about this. We need a public, like, what does democracy matter to us? Why do we need to get involved? And I think that has been missing. So that's what Make Vote Matter have been trying to push, is much more of a public debate about constitutional reform, why your vote matters, and how you can help change the voting system.
And once you start having that debate, you get into the okay, but which version? You've got a single transferable vote, an additional member system, a mixed member PR, and blah, blah, blah. And surely until all advocates of PR can agree on a system, it'll never happen, because it'll just fall down at the first hurdle of, okay, but, all right, I'm willing to consider bringing this in. I'm Prime Minister. Which one do you want to go for? And the Greens want this and the Lib Dems want that and other purists want something different. So how do we go about reaching consensus about which system of British PR would be the most
So we've got something working really well right now in the UK, in Northern Ireland, in Scotland and in Wales, and the mayoral. I wouldn't like supplementary vote as our Westminster option. But I think it is really important that we start talking about a system, and lots of people don't want to talk about a system because it's actually making it real. But if you ask people, like, we're going to change the voting system, how do you feel about it? What's it look like? Is their first question. So important things for us. Constituency link. MPs will tell me time and time again that constituency link is important. So what that means is me, Emma, my MP, if I write to them, they're going to respond. But I tell you what, I've lived in safe seats all of my life. I have only had one MP who's ever responded to my letter. Living in a safe seat does not mean that you've got a constituency link. It means you've got someone whose bum is on a seat in Westminster. Yeah. But that idea of someone shepherding your community and helping them is really great and important. But you don't lose that if in other proportional systems at all.
And again, I would offer the Greek system in defence, because we have larger constituencies which elect more than one MP, again, going down a list.
You've got 3 councillors in a ward in many areas.
Which does mean that if I know that particular MP is not friendly to this particular issue, I can write to that MP that also represents my area, that is more sympathetic, let's say, to disability cats, to just give an example. So again, I think slightly larger constituencies and a selection of MPs for each it feels to me like a healthier.
I think so. No, there are some systems. I don't want to bore everyone about systems, but there are systems. It's the Green and Reform.
You don't know us at all, do you? You love this.
Yeah. But AV Plus, so it basically maintains our current boundaries, but then you sort of pair up some constituencies, then you have a top-up list to make sure it's proportional, right? And my big thing is I want a system that can be implemented tomorrow. There's nothing within our constitution that says we can't change our voting system. And I do not want to get to 2029 and then there be all-out panic amongst progressives because we've left it too late. Yeah. So that's what I want to see. If we decide that we actually prefer AMS, great. STV, simple, fantastic. I really don't care which option it is. But what we do need to do, and you're right, Naomi, is we need to say, this is what works best for Britain as we are now. And actually, we're just about to launch a report which analyses all of the voting systems under what we've called our Good Systems Agreement, which is about proportionality, having constituency link. And that's going to be launched next week, where we go through the systems and what they mean. And from that, we're going to push it out to our partners in the sector, other civil society, politicians, and say, so look, there are real tangible options here that maintain this important link to your constituency, but are proportional and are easy to do. And that's the other thing that drives me crazy is people say, oh, well, voters won't understand a new system. They do. Voters are really smart, right? Yeah. They are really smart. And they know what they really want to do is vote for the candidate who is going to represent them best. And so if that means they have to check an extra box or they have to write something differently, they will do it.
Kenny has managed to vote under different systems in Scotland, England and Wales. If he can do it, anyone can do it.
See the mess the country's in.
He's as thick as sourdough bread. Question.
Yeah.
Is this something that the current government can push through, having not had it in their manifesto as a commitment, because it's quite a big constitutional change, or would it have to go to a referendum? Does there have to be some other sort of mechanism for getting people's okay for it?
Now, I haven't got the Labour Party manifesto right in front of me, but I don't think the winter fuel allowance was in there. I don't think all the welfare stuff was in there. So they can perfectly do stuff that was not in their manifesto. And remember, the Labour Party voted for this in the members in 2022. So they've got a mandate from their members. There is no constitutional barrier from changing the system. And they don't have to have a referendum. Now, they might feel that it's the right thing to do. But I would say if there's going to be a referendum, it has to be a well-funded, honest conversation. not just two like groups of people shouting across Westminster at each other, because that's the other thing about like changing the system. And I just long for the day where I don't turn on the telly and see two men, because it nearly always is men, shouting at each other across a ballot box. I'd quite like to see people having to sit in a circle. I sound like a hippie now, but you know what I mean? Sit in there and actually talk, negotiate, find common ground. And that's what we've got to play for, right? We could have a system where more women get elected, more queer people get elected, more minority ethnic people get elected, because parties, smaller parties that they find to be their home, can get seats. So I think that the prize is so big, and that's what we really need to get to. But yeah, it's not easy, but there is no constitutional barrier to change before the next election.
And there was a manifesto acknowledgement that the current system isn't working. So in fairness to Labour, they didn't say no, nothing at all, ever in the manifesto.
No,
it was very much phrased as
reform,
trust is at an all-time low, the system is not working, and I think there's probably some wording in there about consulting on how to change things.
Yes.
I mean, instinctively, I would say, and have nothing to point to as proof of this, but it feels to me that this is at the core of why Labour, with such a huge majority, are such an unconfident government. I think the notion that they were elected on such a small percentage and got such a huge majority is really in their minds and makes them really quite tentative. And that's the flip side, I guess, of the first past the post system. You know it's built on sand, so you're super risk averse about anything that you might do.
Emma, our listeners need to know how to get involved, how to have this public conversation, how to elevate the need for PR within the country. What should they do?
Yeah, so hop over to makevotesmatter.org.uk. You'll find lots of information about how to email your MP. Drop into one of their surgeries. MPs need to know that this is an issue that matters to us. I'd say as well, talk to people. Right, the more we talk about democracy and what it means to us, the more we can protect it. Because if I'm really honest, the thing I'm most scared about is our democracy is so fragile at the moment that we are at a huge risk of something going desperately wrong. So talk to people. And then when you've had those conversations, come back to me, tell me what people were saying, because the only way we're going to be able to shift the debate is by knowing how to counter those arguments and also build a ground force of people who are going to help us go to the next session in the elections bill, which is coming anytime now, and say we need no more first past the post and we need PR now.
And Emma is so brilliant. So is her team. Make Votes Matter is a terrific organisation. It needs your support. So if you can bung them a few quid, head over to their donate button too.
Well, after all that, get ready to unclench your jaw and actually smile, because Naomi is here to prove that humanity isn't entirely doomed with a good news story of the week in Grin and Share It.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. Do-de-o-do-lo, I want good news.
What have you got for us, Naomi?
Okay, I'm going to caveat this very strongly by saying I grew up in Ireland, where horse riding is not an elitist pursuit. Like, all farmers have kids with ruggedy old little ponies. And so I don't want to make people think that I am some rich kid that had like lots of horses bought for her. I'm not like an English pony club girl. So get that image out of your head. I'm starting with this because
Picture Thelwell's illustrations.
well, exactly. So regular listeners will know that I'm a recovering accountant, but they may not know that I'm also a retired amateur event rider. And having spent like a lot of my teenage years in Ireland doing dressage tests and show jumping and galloping around cross-country fancies on my very inexpensive Connemara ponies, the main reason I gave it all up was because I lost my nerve. One of my amazing trainers, Sam Moore, was killed on the cross-country course at Blenheim in a 3-day event in 1998, and another friend of mine broke her back really seriously during a fall on a course in County Antrim, and I was behind her when it happened. And Caroline March, who was a brilliant event rider, chose to end her life after a spinal cord injury left her really severely debilitated. So I follow the sport really keenly, but now from a very safe distance, and take an interest in supporting spinal cord research. And I was absolutely thrilled to find out this week that a research team at the University of Minnesota has discovered a groundbreaking process that combines 3D printing, stem cell biology, and lab-grown tissue to provide spinal cord injury recovery. And it's so promising in terms of the trial that's come out of it. It is not just recovery from spinal cord injury. They're now also looking at reversal of the injury. So they've used what I think, I'm not a medic, so reading tense medical stuff is a slight challenge for me, but they've used lab-grown organs to create a kind of scaffolding, and that has got microscopic channels inside it that they then populate with adult stem cell with the capacity to divide and differentiate so that new nerve endings begin to grow, new nerve fibers. And that method then creates a relay that, when placed in the spinal cord, bypasses all of the damaged area and is giving, you know,
the nerve is it's not the discs and the
no, it's the actual nerve.
Wow.
And they've transplanted these scaffolds into rats with spinal cords that were completely severed, and the cells successfully differentiated into neurons and extended their nerve fibers in both directions, up towards the head, down towards the tail, to form new connections with the host's existing nerve circuit. So like a heart bypass, it's able to just redirect around the damaged area of a spine. And the new nerve cells just like integrate completely normally and seamlessly into the host spinal cord tissue over time, and have led so far to this really significant functional recovery in rats. And according to the WHO, there are 15 million people around the world living with spinal cord injury. So I think this breakthrough could have a completely astounding impact on improving the lives of many. And I just wanted to say, like, well done, science. It's not enough to convince me to go around a cross-country course on a Connemara pony ever again, but it is, I think, wonderful news for humanity.
That is phenomenal. Thanks, Naomi. We'll drop a link. I want to read more about that, so we will drop a link into the show notes so you, as well, listeners, can not just grin, but also share it.
And with that piece of uplift, we bring this week's show to a close. All that remains is for us to give a huge thank you to Emma for joining us. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. It's been amazing.
Plus, we need to rattle the can once more and ask those of you who aren't already to head over to ko-fi.com/quietriotpod and back us for as little as £5 a month, more if you can afford it, and appreciate what we do to help us make this show sustainable. There's plenty of exciting events on the horizon for our backers, so sign up now to hear all about them.
We'll be back on Sunday with another take on the week's highlights. And if you haven't listened to Alex Andreou's phenomenal season-ending Podyssey highlights, hint, Medusa, it's out already, get on there and listen now. It's really worth an hour or so of your time.
Until then, stay sharp, stay dry, and stay quietly riotous.
We love you lots.
Bye.
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 Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot.
It never rainers, but it pours. It never rainers, but it pours the proverbial... I can't say that.
No.
It never rainers, but it pours the proverbial... Actually can't say it.
Alex
Proverbial.
was clean shaven when he started this week.
Proverbial.
Past, Present, Future is the History of Ideas podcast with me, David Runciman. Twice a week, we explore the history of good ideas, dangerous ideas, revolutionary ideas, and recently, the history of bad ideas. From meritocracy to genius, from austerity to identity, why do good people believe in things that do so much harm? Past, Present, Future, the History of Ideas podcast.